Post office scandal, because the Post Office Minister, Kevin Hollinraker, said the government is working on a plan to speed up overturning the convictions of postmasters wrongly found guilty in the Horizon IT scandal. Calls are growing to help clear the names of hundreds of branch managers who were wrongly convicted because of the faulty accounting system. The former Conservative Justice Secretary, Sir Robert Buckland, says the situation merits an unprecedented approach.
Perhaps there should be a presumption that all those people who were convicted are in fact not guilty. We could go further and simply quash the convictions and render them absolutely void, so that then we're in a position whereby the sort of complications that are hitting the compensation process can be avoided.
More than 700 post office employees were wrongly convicted after the faulty software made it appear that money had gone missing. I'm sure you're aware of that if you've watched the ITV drama over Christmas that's been looking at all of this, that's kind of reignited, I guess, this push for all of this. Less than 100, though, of those postmasters have had their convictions quashed so far. One person who knows about this all too well is the former sub-postmaster Tim Brentnell. He's from Pembrokeshire and had his conviction, though, overturned in 2021. Is that right, Tim?
Yes, that's correct.
Morning. Thanks for joining us on Wake Up to Money. Just tell everybody your story again, Tim.
Okay, so I bought my village shop back in 2005 along with some money from my parents because I found that work was taking me further and further away from home, and I was keen to stay in West Wales and build a future. I ran the shop well and was growing the business, which came with a post office counter, up until late 2009, when I was audited one morning by the post office and a £22,500 shortfall was found. They advised me quite strongly that I should repay that money or I would be facing a theft charge. So I raided my savings, the business account, had to sell my car at the time, borrowed money again from my parents, and paid the money back. And almost as soon as that was done, they then investigated and charged me for false accounting, which I was determined to plead not guilty to. But then, on the advice of barristers, I ended up pleading guilty to it with the hope of avoiding a custodial sentence.
Right. And you did avoid a custodial sentence, didn't you? But obviously had a criminal conviction against your name.
Yes, yeah. Obviously, I pled guilty, so I was convicted of false accounting. I had a suspended sentence for 2 years and a large amount of community service.
Right. I mean, must have been extraordinary walking around knowing you're innocent. I mean, it seems a sort of glib question to ask, but how does that make you feel when you walk around knowing you've done nothing wrong and yet you have that hanging over you, and of course all the things that it shapes in your life as a result in terms of trying to get another job or credit or that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, it was a huge barrier to whenever I applied for any kind of meaningful work. Didn't ever get to an interview stage because you have this fraud conviction. It causes all kinds of trouble because you can't get insurance because you're a convicted fraudster. Many things like that, but also, inside I knew I hadn't done anything dishonest. I was lucky that my close family and friends took me at face value and believed it, but many other people in the wider community didn't. And when I tried to maintain my innocence with them, most people were of the view, well, you've pled guilty to it, and if I hadn't done anything like that, they'd say I'd never plead guilty. And until you've been in the dock, stood in the dock in Crown Court with the prospect of a prison sentence, and then you're told, well, if you plead guilty to this, you we can probably keep you out of prison. I don't think anyone can understand the position that you're put in.
So tell us about going about clearing your name, Tim.
Well, a couple of years after that happened, I first heard of Alan Bates and the Justice for Sub-Postmasters Alliance. When I first contacted Alan, there were about 20 people with him. By the time I got to the first meeting in the village hall, there were over 50 of us. We then had sort of a roller coaster because we managed to get the post office to bring in, or the MPs that we contacted managed to get the post office to bring in Second Sight to review everything. And we thought at that point that was the beginning of where it was all going to change, but eventually the post office didn't like the truths that Second Sight were finding and sacked them. We then had Alan's trial with the 555 of us in 2019, and although as it's well portrayed in the drama, we won. The judge agreed with us, but they basically outspent us, ran us out of money until we had to settle with them. There's no criticism of the funders. Without them, we wouldn't have been able to mount that. But they took their. In fact, they took much less than they were entitled to. If they'd taken what they were entitled to, we'd have been left with absolutely nothing. They've left us with a small amount of money to divide between us, but that's when a win doesn't feel like a win, because we were again left thinking, well, this is probably the end of the road now.
And as you've already said, Tim, you cleared out your savings trying to cover the initial shortfall.
Yeah, I'd cleared out my savings, cleared out my parents' savings. The business then, which was I'd built into quite a little thriving retail business, took a huge hit because, as you can imagine, a local small community in a place like West Wales, they don't want to come to a business where they think that the postmaster's had his hands in the till, because many people saw it as just stealing directly from people's pensions and things like that. So the retail business took a huge dive and became unsustainable in the end, and we had to close that a few years ago.
So you're still pushing for compensation now, I'm guessing?
Yeah, as anyone that's had an overturned conviction, I've had a small interim payment which helped with repaying some of the money that I'd borrowed from my parents 12 years ago, and business debts and credit cards that I've been living on and things like that. But it's nowhere near the recompense that I'm due. And I know for other people that are in the same position as me, but who have had it even harder with prison sentences and things, and 4 people in the group ended up taking their own lives. So we're nowhere near being compensated for what happened to us.
What do you think should happen next then? What would you like to happen next?
Well, I was on tenterhooks yesterday waiting for the minister's announcement, which I don't know why I did that to myself, because it was just a load of almost there were a few choice bits in it where they've named a judge who's going to arbitrate over the cases for the quash conviction scheme. So if we can't reach a settlement with Post Office, then there's a named judge who will step in and look at it, which is good news. But it's slightly annoying because the minister, although I don't doubt he's trying his best, he's obviously stuck in a political cycle. Our convictions were quashed 2.5 years ago, and so far nothing's happened. So to hear the people now talking about we need to speed things up and we need to push things forward, well, we've been hearing things like that for 2.5 years with no result at the moment.
Is that your worry now that, you touched on the drama, because the drama's out, everybody's jumping to it, so to speak, at the moment, but that it could drift again, and that actually you're not hearing anything tangible that's going to change right now?
Yeah, that's the way. I mean, we were all worried that the drama would perhaps trivialise things or wouldn't quite get the importance of the story across, but the drama did such a good job of showing both how despicably the Post Office has behaved towards us over the last 10 years, fighting us tooth and nail whenever we've tried to get justice, and shown the huge personal costs to everybody involved. But as you rightly say, these things happen when the public rightfully get engaged and incensed about these things. There seems to be a flurry of things, and then quite often with these scandals, they get pushed back again when the public appetite for it starts to fall away.
Tim, you speak about it so calmly. I just wonder, are you angry about it still?
Yeah, I have flashes of anger, but to quote my lovely mum, she used to say that I'd have on my gravestone, it will be fine. I was so laid back, I was horizontal, which she said, the last 10 years has changed me. She can see that I'd become withdrawn from things. I'd become sort of very short-fused and argumentative. Things have got a lot better in the last 2 years since we've been exonerated and vindicated. But we need to just keep pushing, and this wave of public support that we've garnered from the drama has been a real help to bring it to the forefront.
Has that wave of public support made its way to that small local community that you were talking about? Do you feel like people are finally? I mean, if anybody apologised to you?
Yes, yeah, I've had when my conviction was first quashed, I had a number of letters and cards from local people, and again in the last week, people have approached me, either the same people to reaffirm how they felt, and what has been quite nice, a few people. Not all of them, but a few people that I really fell out with over it have now come back to apologise.
And what are you doing now, Tim? Are you in business again now, or have you sort of still finding that too difficult to kind of go back to normal, I guess?
Yeah, until we've been compensated. Well, the government like to call it compensation, but as Alan stressed, it's recompense. It's money that they've cost us or taken from us. I mean, even as far as the shortfalls that the post office demanded back falsely and menacingly from people, like they did with me, to avoid a theft charge, we haven't had that money returned as yet, even. So it's very hard to sort of move forward or start to because I've spent so much time in the last 2 years building my case with the solicitors as well, but. So, there's always more to do at the moment.
And you touched on it, Tim, but what would be your message to the government and to the minister?
He needs to... He's hinted at things, and one of the main things is that there were 700 people, or over 700 people convicted, and so far only 93 of us have had convictions quashed. So it's about just over 1 in 10. The government really need to step in, and this is an extraordinary situation. I know there might be... sort of a little bit of constitutional worry about the government overriding the judiciary, but I'm sure there'd be. Even Lord Falconer came out 2 days ago and said there would be complete cross-party support for a complete quashing of all convictions, and I'm sure the judiciary now would realise as well that this is an exceptional circumstance, and if the government wanted to move that quickly, both with quashing of convictions and compensation, they could, legislate or move today or tomorrow, should they wish.
And Tim, you've been, remarkably, I'm sure all of our listeners listening to you speak, remarkably kind of calm, remarkably almost without, even though you said you felt anger, it certainly hasn't sounded like that speaking with you. But, there are people who were involved with the scandal who have not had their lives turned upside down in the way that you describe yours having been done. I just wonder what you think should happen to some of those people. Do you think that that people who got honours, for example, should they have those honours taken off them? There's a petition with almost 1 million people signing up to that, for example, or is that something that doesn't interest you?
Well, it concerns me that people won't be held to account. What concerns me mostly at the moment is getting everybody's convictions overturned, because it's not just the Horizon data that's the problem. The main problem is the way the Post Office investigated and abused its prosecution powers. So whether they say Horizon was important or not, it's been shown in the inquiry that really no Post Office conviction could be deemed safe. So people really need to get on it and get these convictions quashed, and compensation to people that need it, and then accountability for me really is secondary to that. People need to be held accountable, because otherwise, what's to stop people behaving like this again in the future? People need to be shown that you can't even corporately turn a blind eye to things, because Post Office knew that they were prosecuting us off dodgy information as far back as at least 2012, maybe even much earlier than that, and they took the easy route of ignoring it and throwing us under the bus. So that really needs to be addressed.
Tim, well, good luck with all of it. Do come back on and speak to us again if you can about when that does move forward, that process. And I know, looking at the text console on the right of me here, a lot of our listeners texting in this morning wanting to wish you a much happier future and wishing you the very best. So thanks so much for speaking to us this morning.
Thank you for having me on. Thank you.
That's Tim Brentnell there, former sub-postmaster from Pembrokeshire. Should say as well, in response to some of what Tim's been saying, we've got a statement from the Post Office here saying they fully share the aims of the current public inquiry set up to establish what went wrong in the past and accountability for it. They're acutely aware, they say, of the human cost of the scandal and are doing all we can to right the wrongs of the past. And in terms of that compensation, they say to date, offers of compensation totaling more than £138 million have been made to around 2,700 postmasters, the vast majority of which have been agreed and paid. As Tim says, though, plenty who haven't seen that yet or don't think it's gone far enough either. A story I promise you that we'll continue to follow here on Wake Up to Money as it does go forward. Joanna, I just wondered, I know a slightly longer interview than we would normally play in the back half of Wake Up to Money there, but what you made of what you heard.
It's just astounding, isn't it? That number one, you can have an issue in the business that nobody takes a step